What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Clickheads. Today we're taking a deep dive into all of the advanced tactics you can get out of Cypher, featuring possibly the best player in the beta for Valorant, Brax. Coming in hot from a CSGO experience, Brax has been cleaning up in Valorant so far, and you can check out his Twitch link in the description to watch his gameplay live. Now let's get into some little more tricky camera tech and discuss two aspects of using it. The timing of when you want to use it and how to utilize it for peaks, but also positioning. Now we're going to see Brax abuse some spots on maps that I assume would get patched out, because if they don't, they're just going to be serious meta components that you have to respect all the time, and I think that's perhaps a bit more than is warranted in terms of balance, but as long as they're still available, we can see how insane they can be. In this round, hiding his camera inside of the basket of hookah spots the enemy Phoenix, but more importantly, spots that he runs away after looking for control. Between that and no information on B long, the A players were ready for the push, and Brax and AZK were ready for the early rotate to teleport to showers to retake A. When you use the camera, you of course want to be sure to be in a safe position yourself and let it peek for you. But you don't necessarily want to stare in it all the time, because anytime you use it, it uncloaks itself, makes it obvious to the enemy, shows up on their mini-map, and if they're aware enough, they'll shoot it. So ideally, you'd like to be able to look at them when they're not paying attention. But you also can use this to your advantage, where here on an eco round, Brax uses his camera as bait to take a favorable duel up against Nothing, who takes the shot up against the camera, and while his gun is recoiling, Brax is able to take the quick peek to get the kill. He does end up dying after that, but there is a downside to the enemy shooting your camera, especially at long ranges. Now again, some of these spots I'm going to be showing you are likely to get patched out, I think, but the principles of when you time using your camera are going to remain the same. Now I want to get into talking about my favorite use of Cypher's traps in totality, and the real big defensive boost you can get from playing him when your team adjusts to allow the traps to act as an extra player or a decoy player. Here on Split, everybody knows mid control is the most important part of the map. So because of that, Brax abuses this off the map camera position, staring at his traps. If a target rushes in, even if they destroy the tripwire, he can activate the cage to interrupt the rest of the push. But more importantly, this spot allows them to very confidently play for retake on B. You see, rather than holding a standard position, Brax is able to go off and play a safer spot, baiting the site, letting them in and taking it and planting, because as the round develops, this secret camera spot is going to pay dividends. We can see here late in the round, he's able to continuously peek back on the camera to see where the bomb defenders are set up, catches just a small glimpse of the Sage up in heaven, and is able to pre-fire her through the smoke based on that information. The reason why this strategy is good, because generally speaking, B is a tight choke and is fairly easy to defend anyway. So it's not a common contention point for the attacking side. They much rather go get mid control because it has more options to it in this map. But when the attacking side realizes that Brax and the defenders are playing for retake on B, they swap up their strategy to then decidedly rush onto the point, knowing that they don't have as many guns, if at all, pointed at that choke point, just traps they're relying on. So there is some counterplay to this. With the defenders putting an overemphasis on mid, the attackers decide to not oblige them with duels in the center of the map and instead overwhelm the traps. Because yeah, hitting a tripwire sucks, it concusses you, the cage is going to slow you, but beyond that information, bullying your way with multiple members onto the site is still a big win for the attacking side. So that shot call overwhelmed Brax this time, but the next time the attackers try that again, he secures his position a bit more safely, playing behind his cage, a tactic that we'll get into in depth in the next section. In my opinion, it's Cypher's ability to use his traps for map control to instead move his weapon to overload a part of the map that the defense wants to control that makes him so scary. He can afford to take gambles and risk part of the map in order to set up for very favorable crossfires. You see him do this on the pistol round here on Split, because this camera spot over the top of, what's the call out for that, B garage, I guess, is simply just OP. It overlooks the whole thing, looks right to the enemy's barrier, and because of that, he has full confidence that the enemy team is not going to be at all, so they don't even have a defender at B, and instead have a much bigger crossfire on the A site. This is really important because what attacking teams do is count how many players are in standard positions. They're going to expect at least typically one player to be holding B. So when the attacking side spots out his Sage teammate on A and probably had some information on mid players, as the Phoenix runs in, there's no way he's going to expect this angle to be occupied by a defending player. Doubling down on this kind of crossfire requires a stack, and it's normally such a gamble. It's something you only can do on few rounds in the game, but with Cypher's tools, I think you can get away with it a lot more often. More often if you can abuse camera spots that the enemy simply isn't going to see coming. Here on Bind, he does so again. Remember, the enemy doesn't know where your camera is until you use it. So even when you're taking these risks in stacking, you might not pop into that camera until late into the retake, when you and your team are timing coming back into the site. Normally, the risk of retaking is too much for the defense to want to gamble, but it's a heck of a lot easier if you're able to pop back in your camera as you're coming in and spot out some of the defender's positions. Now, that's all the defensive aspects of Cypher. Now let's talk about utilizing his kit in an offensive way. Here on attack, his team is walking into showers. They're playing loose off it. They have showers control, and early enough in the round, the enemy isn't going to know how many players are here. But the attackers have to suspect someone holding showers from somewhere, either from site, U-Haul, heaven. This angle is getting watched, and it's very troublesome to come out of this doorway because there can be a player close to your right, hiding on the boxes, or on multiple other angles. Here, Brax is able to peek his camera quickly around the corner to gain some very critical information. Using the camera this way is sort of like a budget owl drone, emulating Sova's playstyle. It isn't as flexible or as easy to do, but if there was a player on those boxes, he pretty much has to shoot that camera, revealing his position anyway, as to not get marked, but that's all the information the attackers need. So no matter what, that bit of utility pretty much just counters that spot, and is going to help you eliminate how many angles you have to worry about when pushing into the site. If you have to look at 270 degrees of an angle versus 180 degrees of an angle, you're much more likely to be able to win that duel and quickly eliminate how many spots a threat might be. Here is another example of an aggressive cam peek, this time after getting long control at A on Haven. He places the camera down on the ground in the smoke, staring right at the close corner, which should have been a free kill. It doesn't get communicated fast enough. His teammate runs in and dies. This round ends up being a loss, but since you get your camera back every 30 seconds, when you're on attack, don't be afraid to let your camera go in and gain information. It regenerates in 30 seconds, your head doesn't. So anytime you need to clear, toss the camera around the corner because worst case scenario, they shoot it, revealing their position anyway. Now, I want to revisit talking about Cypher's Cyber Cage and how to use it dynamically mid-round. The important thing to remember about it is that Cyber Cage has a few important attributes that allow you to play a lot closer to it than many other agents can play in their smokes. Reason being, it is a hollow smoke, which allows you to peek inside very quickly and punish anyone inside of it, but also it slows enemies but not you, making it easier for you to step inside. But beyond that, when you don't set it up ahead of time, you're not going to be able to activate it from longer ranges. But as far as smokes go, it is one of the faster ones to deploy on the fly. So when you emphasize these strengths, it's a lot better in combat than you might have otherwise thought. For example, here Brax needs to retake back onto A. They know a player is in U-Haul, so Brax throws in an aggressive Cyber Cage, activates it, and at this point, if a player is inside this, they're going to be slowed, unable to run away, and it allows him and his Brimstone to run in, trading it out. It's actually placed pretty perfectly in a spot that's going to deny the angle the enemy would have been holding to pop Brimstone's head as he turns the corner, which allows them to rush them down and, worst case scenario, trade it out when they're playing this close together in the Cyber Cage. Now, a tendency I noticed from Brax is that he really likes to throw down his cage on a close angle to him on a corner. Let me explain why this is a good idea. His team gets the bomb down on A, and after clearing one on site, he's confident that there's a player either coming from Heaven or CT, and in fact, gets the mark on the Heaven player. But there is still a chance that the Sage is playing close to the boxes, in the smoke, around the corner, and after hearing him kill the breach player, there was a timing window with these smokes going down for him to get rushed. This cage essentially stops that from happening. Now, as it happens, he's able to use the camera to spot the Sage in heaven, but even if she were close up on him, the Cypher cage would have slowed her movement, meaning running through that wouldn't be a very good play, but it also blocked the line of sight for the other angle coming from sight, making him virtually invulnerable in this corner for a moment, able to use his camera to gain information rather than his face, which helped contribute to that clutch round. Here's another example of Brax using the cage and the clutch. Retaking onto A in a 1v2, he's searching around to find players, finds one, heading down long, dinks him. He knows that player's low. Now, where's the other player? He suspects that's the bomb planter, and this Brimstone who just used a smoke is probably holding from mid, maybe right on top of him. Checks angles, looks around, just barely gets a glimpse of him coming up the zip line, so he immediately turns, assumes that the Cypher is still on long, playing on the safe angle, as you would after getting dinked, tosses the cage down and pre-fires through it to find the kill. This means there was zero window for the enemy Cypher to get a peek on him whatsoever. He would have had to have already been peeking out that doorway, which would have been bad at such low HP anyway, to be able to get that kill. If he doesn't put this cage down, there's a chance that on the timing, while Brax is moving, the peeking player might have the advantage to turn the corner and one-tap him. But as it is, he's able to get the kill and knows he can stick the defuse because the Brimstone player is too far away. Okay, so those are some dynamic uses of the cage, but there's one last technique that is pretty nutty, and I'm going to call it cage hopping. Very similar to Omen, because Cypher smokes are hollow and he can stack two together, it is possible to make a trail of smokes and go for some redonkulous flanks. Here, he gets a kill on one of the A defenders and the smokes go down. Still suspecting defenders to either be in heaven or perhaps U-Haul, he waltzes into the smokes, but importantly, the breach player concusses him onto sight, but between either using his awareness or the minimap, he leapfrogs these cages to make safe passage for him to avoid the CT angle entirely and get himself into U-Haul, effectively shielding him from the stun coming from Breach, but also getting a flank on the Brimstone player who in the chaos of all of this didn't see this coming. Now, it's important to note that playing close in your hollow smokes, I would say favors players that are moving as well as whoever has the stronger close range weapon. This is something that you could use with a shorty or a shotgun. We see him attempt it again here against the Sage, and it does isolate that close range engagement. If he had a teammate close by to trade this out, this might look a bit more effective, but as it stands, the player with the shotgun is likely going to win in these close range hollow smoke scenarios. So you do want to tread lightly with this tactic. It's not to be used every round. It's a bit cheesy, but something that you can definitely pull out in order to catch your opponents off guard. And last but not least, we're going to talk about the ultimate neural theft. This is one that you want to pop out when you don't have information on where the enemy are exactly. This round gets a bit scuffed, and in the chaos of it, the enemy Brimstone is launching his ult at the bomb, and Brax just barely steals it away, gaining the information that the rotate fully went on to see. Now, at this point, it's a bit of a race. The two defending players would have needed to immediately run to the other side of the map to keep pace with Brax running on the wraparound at full speed. Assuming that they didn't do that, because it alone would have been risky, especially if he stayed there, for example, hearing them run and making a play off that information, he confidently places down the camera to overlook the site and dry plants the bomb, anticipating the most likely rotation to come from heaven or the lower hallway from CT. All his assumptions turn out to be correct, and with a forward trap to spot for him, he's able to set up this engagement in his control, making this 1v2 look like it's actually favored in Brax's hands, picking up the clutch round. And it's these types of things you can do with neural theft, making better decisions based on your enemy's positioning on the defense, and almost them knowing they're getting revealed alone can be enough to force a mistake out of them. But with that, that's the entire kit of Cypher. I hope you guys found this advanced guide useful. If you did, please be sure to leave the video with a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you actually get notified when our videos go live. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for ClickHeads. We'll see you guys next time.